I assume we're getting 8 minutes there.
Mr. Nunes, I don't cut off a witness in the middle of their answer. You may proceed.
Sorry, that was a long answer.
Mr. Jordan.
Mr. Holmes, why didn't your boss talk about it?
What's that, sir?
Why didn't your boss bring up the call that you overheard? The reason you're here today. I mean, you're their closing witness, yet their star witness, their first witness, Ambassador Taylor, didn't even bring it up. And when we deposed you, you said this was extremely distinctive experience, one of the most remarkable events of my life. You described it like this. You said, after the call happens, I immediately told Deputy Chief of Mission and others at the embassy about the call. Then you said you went on vacation. You told several friends and family about the call. Then you come back on August 6th and you tell Ambassador Taylor about the call. And then in your deposition statement, you said in your statement today as well, I repeatedly referred to the call in meetings and conversations where the issue of the president's interest in Ukraine was relevant. I repeatedly referred to the call in meetings and conversations where the issue of the president's interest in Ukraine was relevant. That sounds like government speak for you told everybody. Yet their star witness, their first witness, Ambassador Taylor, when he came here, he related 13 different conversations he had between July 18th when the aid is frozen, September 11th when it's released. 13 different conversations, never once mentioning this call. July 19th, Dr. Hill, Colonel Vindman told Taylor what Sondland told them. July 19th, Sondland told Taylor about the upcoming Trump-Zelensky call. July 20th, Sondland told Taylor what Sondland told Zelensky to tell Trump. July 20th, Dana Look tells Taylor what Zelensky told Dana Look. July 28th, Morrison tells Taylor what happened on the Trump-Zelensky call. August 16th, Volker tells Taylor what Yarmak told Volker. August 21st, Breckbull talks to Taylor. August 22nd, Morrison talks to Taylor. August 29th, Yarmak talks to Taylor. September 1st, Morrison tells Taylor what Sondland told Morrison about what Yarmak told Sondland. September 2nd, Morrison tells Taylor what Dana Look told Morrison. September 7th, Morrison tells Taylor what Sondland told Trump. And September 8th, Sondland tells Taylor what Trump told Sondland. Nowhere is there a Holmes tells Taylor what the President of the United States told Sondland.
May I answer that question?
13 conversations. Yeah, I'll get to you. I'll give you a chance here in a second. But 13 conversations from their star witness. You're their closing witness, and he can't remember a call from a guy he works with every single day. Why?
Yes, sir. So immediately when I went back to the embassy after this lunch on the 26th, I told my direct supervisor, the Deputy Chief of Mission, I would have told Ambassador Taylor immediately, except he was on the front lines that afternoon. I then went on, as I testified, my vacation on Saturday, came back the following Monday, and on Tuesday, I was back in the ambassador's office where I referred to the call. In that week plus that I was away, it was my assumption that the Deputy Chief of Mission would have informed other people about the call as well. So my recollection is when I did refer to the call in that meeting that Ambassador Taylor nodded knowingly as though he had been briefed on it. So I referred to the call and I mentioned some of my takeaways from the call. And at the time, the main takeaway from the call was the president doesn't care about Ukraine. So we're going to have a tough road ahead to convince him that it's important enough for him to schedule an Oval Office meeting for President Zelensky and ultimately to release this hold on security assistance. That was the takeaway. And that's what I referred to repeatedly in the coming weeks whenever it became relevant. And I'll remind you, sir, that one more important point. Throughout this time, as I've testified, we were trying to find a formula, things we could do with the Ukrainians that would convince the president that they were worth talking to.
Maybe Mr. Holmes, the takeaway was he thought it was no big deal because he already knew. He didn't remember because we already had the transcript.
No,
he didn't remember the Trump-Zelensky transcript had been out for 2 months.
Sir, I believe that
even though you're repeatedly bringing this conversation up, as you said, to everybody anytime there's a talk about Ukraine, you recall this conversation. Maybe it was the transcript. The call happened on the July 25th. That's 4 months ago. The transcript's been out for 2 months. Maybe the ambassador thought this is nothing new here, but. Shazam, last week you come forward with supposedly this new information. There is nothing different in there than what we had on the transcript. Maybe that's the reason their star witness, their first witness, didn't bring it up, but they had to have something. So you're their closing witness because you overheard the president talking to Ambassador Sondland.
Sir, if I could answer, I see 4 seconds left on the clock. I believe that
Mr. Holmes, you may take as long as you need.
Thank you, sir. I believe that Ambassador Taylor did already know when I briefed him when I returned from vacation on the 6th. It was not news to him that the president was pressing for a Biden investigation.
That's not what I asked. I asked why he didn't share with us.
Mr. Jordan, please do not interrupt the witness any further. Mr. Holmes,
this is exactly
Mr. Jordan's time has expired, but yours has not.
Okay, thank you,
You may
sir.
answer the question.
It's exactly my point. I briefed the call in detail of the deputy chief of mission, went away for a week, come back, I refer to the call, and everyone is nodding. Of course that's what's going on. Of course the president is pressing for a Biden investigation before he'll do these things the Ukrainians want. There was nodding agreement. So did I go through every single word in the call? No, because everyone by that point agreed. It was obvious what the president was pressing for. And Ambassador Taylor, as you've just outlined, had all those other interactions with
But he
all
didn't
these
share it with us.
Mr. Jordan, please do not interrupt.
But sir, sir, my vivid recollection of an event I was involved with was a touchstone experience that to me validated
Mr. Jordan, please
what we believed. And Ambassador Taylor was not in that call.
And so all of a sudden last week you got to come tell us, right?
Mr. Jordan,
your boss
will allow the witness to answer the question.
I'll finish with this.
Thank you.
He was involved in a number of other interactions, as you've outlined, that brought him to the same conclusion. It is quite possible that
He doesn't share the one that the guy he worked with.
Mr. Jordan,
He doesn't share that
Mr. Jordan, you may not like the witness's answer, but we will hear it.
There wasn't an answer.
Mr. Jordan, we will hear the witness's answer. Have you concluded, Mr. Holmes?
I have, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Hill, Mr. Holmes, thank you for your testimony. Dr. Hill, you made a fairly dramatic comment in your opening statement to which the ranking member took some exception. I'm more interested in the Ukraine piece of this, but you said some of you on this committee appear to believe that Russia and its security services did not conduct a campaign against our country and that perhaps somehow, for some reason, Ukraine did. I'm really much more interested in the Ukraine piece of this, but I do want to defend you briefly. I don't know what my colleagues believe, but I do have a pretty good sense of what the effects are of creating ambiguity, of lacking clarity and conviction around the Russian attack on the election of 2016. In response to your comment, the ranking member offered up a report which varies in material respects from the report that was created by the 17 agencies of the intelligence community. A day does not go by in which Ranking Member Nunes does not speak of the Russia hoax. And this is an area in which context is pretty important. Dr. Hill, let me read you a comment by another senior official. Why did Democratic National Committee turn down the DHS offer to protect against hacks? It's all a...
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Burgess, is recognized for his comments and questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ranking Member Jordan, I was intrigued by your statements on the, we all suffered through the Mueller probe, the Russia hoax in 2017 and 2018. These allegations were brought with no basis in fact, and there was no accountability for having put the country, put the Congress through what we went through during those 2 years. I just find it striking that now we have the same individuals proposing this legislation, but seems to lack the self-awareness of the problems that he himself caused the country by this reckless and partisan witch hunt that he went on.
Yeah, I mean, he said more than circumstantial evidence, more proof that there was collusion between President Trump and Russia, and it was just all false. And frankly, now we know it was. Now that we've seen information, now that the Durham report has indicted Mr. Zussman and Mr. Danchenko, and even the Washington Post has had to apologize and retract some of the things they wrote back then based on things Mr. Schiff was saying. And I think this is important for members of Congress to understand. This wasn't just any member of Congress making that statement. This wasn't just any chairman making that statement. This was the chairman of the Intel Committee, the committee that gets additional information than the rest of us get, going on television and saying something that was not true. That's the concern. And that is why so many Americans are upset with what took place for 3 years, all based on baloney. So much baloney that the Washington Post had to walk it back. So this is what's critical. And, look, but to Mr. Cole's point, We're happy to work with the inspector. We like the inspector generals. Inspector General Horowitz, his reports on what the FISA court's been doing, those have been tremendous. So we want to work with them. We want to get information. But it would have been nice if they would have worked with us and we could have put something together. But no, couldn't do it that way. We're going to just pile in one bill. We're going to bring it in front of the Rules Committee, take it to the floor, and pass it.
Yeah, and I think that's unfortunate as well, and it certainly negates any expertise that the representatives of one half of the country literally have sent to Washington to represent them. And that unfortunately is that we see that scenario played out over and over again. We're going to see it several times today in all of the appropriations work that remains to be done, the debt limit. Why we think it's necessary to cut out one half of the representatives of the people of this country. It doesn't seem like any way to run a railroad. I do have, I have a lot more I could say about this, but in the interest of time, I do have 3 amendments that I want to just briefly mention because I will be asking for them to be included in the legislation that the Rules Committee puts out later today. The First Amendment, Amendment number 6, which strikes Title II, which extends the statute of limitations for federal offenses committed by a sitting president or vice president. As written, this bill provides 9 specific reasons that a president must choose to justify the removal of an inspector general. The president is the head of the executive branch and has the power to appoint certain inspectors general for executive branch agencies and departments. This amendment would remove these 9 reasons and instead require a written communication from the president or from the head of the federal agency that is removing an inspector general to the committees of jurisdiction in both the House and the Senate, explaining the substantive rationale, including a detailed and case-specific reason for the removal or suspension of an inspector general no later than 15 days before the change in status. Now, in June of 2020, the Supreme Court ruled in Celia Law versus Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that the restrictions on the removal of the CFPB director were unconstitutional, specifically violating the Constitution's separation of powers. So this amendment would remove this unconstitutional provision while still requiring transparency and accountability in the offices of the Inspector General. And this provision was included in H.R. 2662 that the House passed in June. And at that time, myself and Ranking Member Comer offered this same amendment, but it was not made in order. Perhaps this time it could receive consideration by the full House. And Ranking Member Comer, I assume that you still feel that this would be an important improvement to this process. The next amendment would strike Title II of the legislation. Title II of H.R. 5314 extends the statute of limitations for offenses allegedly committed by a sitting president or vice president for the duration of their tenure and any period of time preceding their tenure in office. While we can all agree with the title of this section, no president is above the law, this section sets elected officials apart. Under current law, elected officials may be investigated for alleged commission of crimes, and any information that can be brought before the Congress Congress can then choose to remove the official from the office via impeachment. If impeached and removed, that individual would then be open to full prosecution, the full extent of the law, well within the statute of limitations, just like every other American. Title II is unconstitutional as the Sixth Amendment Speedy Trial Clause protects the accused against unreasonable delays between an indictment and a trial. Extending the statute of limitations in Title II of this bill would only further politicize the presidency and vice presidency and make holders of those offices targets of politically motivated investigations after their terms end. And I would urge the committee to include this and allow the amendment to be debated on the floor and allow members of the House to vote their will on that. And finally, amendment number 11 to 5314. This amendment would require any congressional subpoena to be approved by both the chair and the ranking member or a 2/3 majority of the committee or subcommittee issuing the subpoena. Congressional subpoenas are powerful fact-finding tools. They're used to compel either testimony or the production of certain documents. However, subpoenas have recently become politicized weapons, with the majority party currently seeking contempt of Congress from anyone who doesn't immediately comply with a subpoena. And as I referenced last week, this invokes some of the worst excesses of the McCarthy era back in the 1950s, the House Un-American Activities Committee that created a blacklist of 10 individuals because they failed to comply with a subpoena. These measures are purely punitive and would not produce the information sought by the subpoena. This politicization reduces the effectiveness of subpoenas, creates mistrust when subpoenas are issued in a blatantly partisan manner, and currently most committees simply require consultation with the ranking member of a committee and/or a vote by the majority of the committee, with at least a third of the members being present. By requiring with this amendment approval of both the chair and the ranking member, or at least two-thirds of the majority of the committee, subpoenas would be less likely to be used as a partisan attack, and this would improve the public's trust in Congress and our constitutionally and correctly placed oversight. So I urge that this amendment be made in order as well. And Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the
lòng man mát buồn. 90 ngày qua chứa chan tình thương, ngày mai xa cách hai đứa hai nơi, phút gần gũi nhau mất rồi, tạ từ là hết người ơi. Tiếng ve nức nở buồn hơn tiếng lòng, biết ai còn nhớ đến ân tình không? Đường xưa in bóng hai đứa nay đâu, những chiều hẹn nhau lúc đầu giờ như nước trôi qua cầu. Giá biết bạn lòng ơi, thôi nay xa cách rồi, kỷ niệm đừng xin nhớ mãi. Buồn riêng một mình ai, chờ mong từng đêm gối chiếc, mối u hoài này anh có hay? Nếu ai đã từng nhặt hoa thấy buồn, cảm thông được nỗi vắng xa người thương. Màu hoa phượng thắm như máu con tim, mỗi lần hè sang kỷ niệm, người xưa biết đâu mà tìm. Giá biết bạn lòng ơi, thôi nay xa cách rồi, kỷ niệm đừng xin nhớ mãi. Buồn riêng một mình ai, chờ mong từng đêm gối chiếc, mối u hoài này anh có hay? Nếu ai đã từng nhặt hoa thấy buồn, cảm thông được nỗi vắng xa người thương. màu hoa phượng thắm như máu con tim. Mỗi lần hè sang kỷ niệm, người xưa biết đâu